Welcome to Golf Industry Guru and the Gig Podcast, where we interview the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. On today's episode, you will learn some proven real-world solutions that'll help you and your team solve some of your biggest golf business challenges. So stick around for some tips, tools, and training to get you, your people, and your business powered on. Here's your host, James Cronk.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Golf Industry Guru podcast. It is your host, James Cronk, and I am excited and pleased to be talking to a fellow Canadian from back in the Ontario market, where I grew up as a young lad, where even we have some hockey-related history, Mr. Tim O'Connor and I, but we have brought on a performance coach, ladies and gentlemen. I got Tim's book the other day, Getting Unstuck, and there's so many things in the work that Tim does that is more than just simply about performance coaching. Tim O'Connor is a performance coach. He's worked with golfers, amateur golfers, but also golf professionals, business leaders, individuals in various different industries. And in all of that work, helps people, get unstuck, I guess, and then a bunch of other things as well. So welcome to the Golf Industry Guru podcast, Mr. Tim O'Connor. Tim, welcome.
Thank you, James. Thanks. Pleasure to be here. And folks, the connection we have is that James used to play hockey with my little brother, and James was quite a tenacious little guy, as you might imagine.
Well, I tell you, I wasn't getting shifts because of skill, Tim. I was getting shifts because I never stopped moving my legs.
Yeah, you're a third line grinder.
I was a third line grinder, is right. 100%.
You went to the corner and created chaos.
Exactly. So Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I'm pleased we're doing this. This is going to be fun.
So let's just get started and tell me about your journey in golf. Tell me about your journey, about all the different things that you have. I mean, goodness, it's been a lifetime in golf, but many other things. But tell our listeners about your journey.
Sure. Well, like a lot of golfers of my vintage, of a certain age, I got into golf through caddying, and I was fortunate to grow up in London, Ontario, where my parents were members at Sunningdale Golf and Country Club, and so I got into golf in a big way, but I became a better caddy than I was a golfer. And a lot of the guys who were like, scratch players who contended for Club C and played at invitationals asked me to caddy for them. And watching these players just play with such confidence and just kind of paint the sky with a ball and the way they just went about their business, I was just so entranced by it. So I think that's where golf got its hooks into me. And, so, I was a very avid junior player. Again, not that great, but I played a lot of other sports. I was also played in bands. I played bass guitar and rock bands. And as I went ahead in my 20s, I got into journalism was my career. And I worked with, I was a music critic in the 1980s with the Canadian Press News Agency. But I was just such a deep golf nerd, read everything, and wanted to become a great player like those players I used to caddy for when I was a kid. But as I tried to get better, I was a perfectionist. I tried to do everything right, read every book, memorized Hogan's Modern Fundamentals book, Jack, Golf My Way, VHS tapes were the thing. That gives you an indication how old I am. And, tried to do everything perfect, take lessons. But as I just found that I just wasn't getting better at this game. And so I just came to understand that I was a paralysis by analysis basket case, trying to take care of where my elbow is, my left knee, et cetera, et cetera. And I just expanded my awareness of what goes on in this game, largely through being a journalist. And I covered golf in the 90s. So I covered 7 Masters. I got to talk to some of the best coaches in the world. Be around good players. I took lessons from Sean Foley, other people like that. I wrote the biography of Moe Norman. So I got to hang around the best ball striker who ever lived. And so I learned a lot. But the key thing I learned is that always thinking so much, trying to meet some external standard about what a swing looks like, what your index is, are you doing the right thing, that in many ways that was shackling me. And it didn't allow me to take advantage of my innate talent just as being a human. What I mean is not that I was overly gifted with talent, but every person has ability. And I wasn't able to access it because I was just trying so hard and trying to think my way through the swing. And once I kind of got that through my thick skull, through researching and my own experience, and then doing a podcast called Swing Thoughts, that helped. I just launched myself into this world of coaching that, as you said, included not only the mental part of the game, the physical part of the game, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. And it's been a lot of fun to write about that, coach people, do workshops and speaking. And I guess that's kind of why we're talking, James.
Well, it is, Tim, because in looking at your website, and going through your history, and I've known of you, and you and I have known each other a little bit for many, many years, obviously, and I certainly know your work with organizations like the PGA and others, and the two sides of, like, from a golfer standpoint. But today, really, what I want to kind of understand and grab for you for our audience is what a professional, an instructor, a coach, what are one of the things that's so interesting about your work, Tim, is you really, there's a mindfulness about obviously what you do and what you teach, and talking to people about the mental side. And it's often, in my humble opinion, not spoken about enough. People helping them get unstuck, as you say, really in your book. So I think that there's going to be a lot of people that teach the game listening to this podcast. And I know you do a lot of work in that area, and there's some questions I have for you, if you don't mind, around that direction. So how does someone that, for example, you talk about holistic coaching,
mm-hmm.
right? And I always get these promotional blurbs about a workshop coming up, about swing playing, or about, like how to hit it further, and how to increase swing speed, or all the various different things that are being taught in all these seminars. But I'm really more interested in, from your standpoint, what is a professional, for a young golf pro or a seasoned golf pro that is trying to help their students? What in your experience in working with people that are successful in holistic coaching, what are the elements of that? What does it mean when you say you're integrating holistic coaching to help a player improve?
Well, so when you talk about holistic, it starts with being aware there's a number of different things that fit together as a whole. But we could also start with a fundamental foundation that everything that happens to us as a human starts in the brain. Everything. Our physicality, the way we react to feelings, emotions, our perceptions, how our mind works. So I think we're really fooling ourselves if we think that one element of golf, if we pay, the majority of our attention there, we're going to gain the benefits. We're in effort. We invest here, let's say, we're going to get a big ROI. So usually the investment in golf is through the technical aspects of golf, the swing, the playing, the different angles, all those different things that go into hitting a golf ball. And they are definitely important. However, golf, in my conviction and my work, it takes in 5 different things. So golf is technical, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Now, spiritual might strike people as a bit weird. You could say psychological, if that's more in, but people confuse that. Spirit, isn't psychology, mental, the same thing? No, there's things that are calling on us that we're not even aware that are there in our psychology and our spirit. But if you take any of those things and they're out of balance, you're not going to be able to play the golf you want, because you might be making decisions about what to do. Let's say panic practice. Let's say someone's has a casual round on Saturday morning. They got a match coming up on Tuesday, and their drives, let's say they're leaving their drives out to the right. They're pushing it all day. And they go, damn it, I got this match. So they go to the range, after their game. And in essence, they're kind of in a panic. And it's like 3 buckets or bags later, they're no better. And in fact, they're worse because of decisions they've made about what they're working on instead of staying with what they know, going with their process, just, do the best we can. So like I say, we always have to take a look at everything that's there. Now, I'm going to try to be as practical as I can here with folks. The best way to integrate, to start with this, with coaching that looks at all the different elements, is just to start asking your students questions. Just be a great question asker. And I think it always starts with asking a golfer, what do you want? What do you want from your golf in the season, or what do you want from our time together if you're on the range with a lesson or just meeting in the office? Because that provides you with an ability to understand where the student is in their game and all the different aspects of the game. And most people are unaware of how they show up in all these different elements of golf, and just ask them good questions. And through asking those questions in a non-judgmental way, people will start to develop some awareness and go, oh, that's what I do.
We'll get back to our conversation in a moment. But first, are you ready to learn from the world's greatest golf and hospitality industry leaders? Train your team and grow your business with a membership to Golf Industry Guru. Join for about $3 per day and give your team access to over 250 hours of courses, podcasts, webinars, templates, articles, live Q&A calls, and more. Free content samples and registration details at golfindustryguru.com.
I know you talk to a lot of amateurs and coach a lot of amateurs and golfers that want to get better in that regard. Do you think there's some consistency with the why people play golf? Like understanding the why. Like I always say, on the first tee, you could have 10 people with 10 different reasons. One wants to get away from work. One wants to get exercise. One wants to get better. One wants to play with their spouse. One wants to get away from their spouse. One wants to, whatever it might be, right? So there's everyone, and that's what makes the game, I think, so fascinating and so difficult, by the way, to market to it, right, is because there's so many people get so many different things from it. But have you found in your work and your conversations and your research that there's some consistency there?
Well, the consistency is most people give an answer. Why do you play golf? And I'll say things like, I just need to escape. I need to escape my work. I love just hanging with my friends. I love being outdoors. But the majority I've been asking this question for over 10 years, and most of the time is, I'm competitive. I want to see how good I can get. And so what they give is answers like, I want to get my index down. I want to win, my flight in my club C. I want to win a tournament. All the way through. And a lot of these are external standards. I want to get my swing looking good and all this kind of thing. And there's truth in all of that. But I think that for most people, there's deeper reasons why we play this game. And I think through the culture and oftentimes the way we grew up, I think we lose sight with those core reasons or connections with golf. And we get overly consumed with how many over par we are, or my index is on a plateau. So what I would say is, as a golf professional, in a workshop or individually, you could say, why do you play golf? And people will give you those top level answers. But just keep asking, is there another reason why you play? Anything else? And just you go deeper and deeper. And then at a certain point, you could even say, tell me your favorite golf memory. Tell me about when you played golf with your mom and your dad or whoever introduced you to the game. What was the best shot you ever hit? Favorite time on a course? Favorite time to play? And what happens is people drop down below sort of their conscious ego mind, again, which is usually concerned with, as I say, those standards, index, scores, etc. and it'll drop down and go, oh yeah, it was such a connection with my parents. Or I just love feeling the breeze on my face, the smell of the grass, the birds and everything. It just chilled me out, man. And I just love being on a practice green by myself at twilight or something, and just kind of wishing I could hold the sun up there a little longer, you know? And I think that helps. I mean, there's no getting around it. We all want to hit the ball well. No one's happy hitting it sideways. We all want our indexes to go down. We'd love to win the Club C or beat your obnoxious brother-in-law. But again, if we hold things in balance, golf is more fun. We have more freedom. And as a bonus, we generally play better.
You know, I'm a PGA of Canada member, although goodness forbid, no one would ever want to take a lesson from me. I can assure you that. In fact, there's some people I owe money back to from many years ago, but you know, it's always struck me though, Tim, that the golf industry seems to why has not one way stuck in the way to teach people to get better? You know, like we've gone through all, you know, you get a celebrity coach, you know, all of a sudden someone's teaching Tiger Woods, and you mentioned Sean Foley, obviously an unbelievable and a proud, you know, what a proud thing for Canadians that, you know, we've had one of our instructors, but there's many others, as you and I both know, and there's unbelievable teachers teaching right now young kids and college kids. And I mean, there's unbelievable expert professionals in our country and in the rest of the world, North America, beyond, obviously, doing a great job. But they all have their own way. And they all normally have their own secret sauce. And I don't think enough of this is a generalized statement. I think generally, if you sign up for a lesson with a golf professional, they're not going to sit down and have a conversation with you first for 20 minutes about your why in golf, or about, you know, what do you think about, or, you know, what are you trying to accomplish, you know, and delve a little deeper. It's kind of like, well, hit a few balls and let me take a look, and I can see you're coming in from the outside. You know, like, let's try to work on that, you know, go to the range and hit some balls, you know, working a short game. So why do you think we haven't, in the hundreds of years, have a master method for people to improve and lower their handicaps? Because I don't think over the years they're dropping drastically on average.
Well, you're right about that. I think it's almost to the point of cliche that we'll say that, you know, the indexes have not dropped. You know, considering the focus on the better equipment now, the emphasis on technology and how that's improved, fitness, all those good things. We haven't got much better. But I think largely, I mean, it's so interesting I was thinking about how back in the day, my dad tried the square to square method, and how that just screwed him up royally. And then you had the Jim McLean's X Factor, Ledbetter, the A swing.
That one used to be the Ledbetter one got me. I was a young golf pro. But
yeah, there you go. So there's all these different methods, and I think you do need to understand, you know, certainly as a professional, and if you're going to get better as an amateur, you have to understand certain fundamentals. That you hit down with an iron, make the ball go up, and that the ball is not the target. You know, the target is the target, et cetera. You have to understand that stuff, and, you know, posture, foundations, those kinds of things. What generally happens, from my experience, is that people draw on their own experience and they think this is the way. And so they'll take a physical experience and they'll try to use some words so they can communicate it. So for sake of example, Ben Hogan said, I think it was upwards of 44 times or so, that in his book, The Modern Fundamentals, you start the downswing by turn your left hip. So that worked for Hogan, certainly. But what Hogan didn't communicate well in that, you also needed, rather than this rotary motion, you needed to have also a lateral motion. So it had all these people who are basically, wiping out their left ankle by trying to turn so sharply. And we do that as instructors. We think that our experience, what we've done, what works for us could work for someone else. And I think that's somewhat, we're rather actually kind of arrogant, but that's naturally what we do. So I think the way I work with players, and I work with and my mentors, such as Carl Morris over in Europe, and certainly Fred Shoemaker and people of that ilk, we try to draw what's the experience of the player. And again, it's usually by asking questions. So rather than saying, "Oh, geez, James, you're coming over the top here. Hey, pal, here's what you do. You do this, this, and this, and see you in 2 weeks." That's a teaching model. And there's a place for people to understand what happens if they come over the top, if that's their problem. But unless people have an experience of what they are doing, they can't correct it. You can't correct anything that you're unaware of. So that's why I try to come at it is by asking a student, first, what do you want? What do you want to achieve? If we're doing a series of lessons, what do you want at that end? And what do you want to do today? And ask really good questions so you get a sense of their experience. And all that other stuff will come over time. You can add in your morsels of wisdom, noting, certain things that happen in the swing. And you certainly do some teaching. But to me, I think if we can create more coaching and draw people out of their experience, then they can have a better sensory experience of what their body's doing, how they're swinging the club, rather than trying to think their way through it. And that, to me, is largely where people will really struggle if it's just trying to use their brain to move body parts.
Managing safety and compliance at your golf facility doesn't have to be overwhelming. Introducing the Toolbox, an all-in-one health and safety solution built specifically for the golf industry. Streamline your safety processes, manage staff training, equipment safety, chemical usage, hazard identification, and incident reporting, all from one easy-to-use platform. Save time, ensure compliance, and empower your team to proactively create a safer workplace. Learn how the Toolbox can help your golf facility thrive at thetoolbox.tech.
Well, it's kind of like you've been watching me play golf, because that's exactly my current problem, in that fact that I'm very well aware, based on, using top trainer and everything else, that my club face is square, but it's coming over the top. And that's why I'm hitting pull hooks and then sometimes some wide right flares. But the problem, Tim, is that in my head, I have so many thoughts in my head that I actually just can't swing. Like, I can't swing freely. And when I laugh about, I'm 60, whatever plus, and, I sit in the golf shop sometimes, at the clubhouse, and I look out at the Mr. Jones, who's 75, who can't put the tee in the ground. And then he stands up and he doesn't think for 2 seconds, and he just, takes a swing, and who knows where the club head's going. But I can tell you what happens is that ball goes 230 right down the middle every single time. And I sit there and go, why can't I do that? Because and partly is because I'm still trying to, hit it 290 and keep up with a bunch of other guys. But what makes me, obviously the term paralysis by analysis and performance anxiety and all those things. And once again, when we're talking about the mental side of the game, right? Like, I've got lots of suggestions about how I can hit the ball with a draw. Mm-hmm. But what's not helping me is the fact is, what am I supposed to think about when I'm standing over that ball? And I've got, okay, take it back this way. I got 19 things in my head because I've watched 19 different videos on YouTube about, what I'm supposed to do. I'm generalizing, obviously. So what are some strategies that, coaches should use to help? We also talk about the rabbit hole. You talk about the rabbit hole in your blog about negative thoughts, negative thinking, right? So whether it's anxiety, whether it's the rabbit hole, whatever it might be. It's like when you're playing well and all of a sudden you shank one and you got to get your game back on track. What are some strategies that coaches should be using with their players to help them from a mental standpoint?
Well, where it starts with most people is that they have this, they know, if you're a very avid golfer, you're a golf nerd, like you've likely read or heard, or you're not supposed to have, swing thoughts. You're not supposed to think like that, and they know it, but they do it anyways. Or that, if they have a bad thought, let's say they're cruising along and, they're going to break, 190, 80 for the first time. Say, oh my God.
And on hole number 17, OBs to the right. That's what they're thinking about.
Exactly. So they start thinking, but that's quite natural. It's natural to think. But what most people are unaware of is how they habitually think and how they habitually behave. And so it's quite natural for people, let's say we'll go with the good round going. They're going to do one or two things. A lot of people will slow down and they'll start to get very cautious and they'll be very cognizant of making a very good practice swing, and they start to think more. And so that's their behavior. Or they'll speed up. They'll talk faster, walk faster, all that kind of stuff. And just things will tend to speed up. But most of the time, they're unaware of that. That's why PGA Tour, LPGA Tour players have caddies who can reflect, oh, hey, partner, let's slow it down. Largely what they're doing is helping them become aware of what they're doing. So the key thing, I think, that you can introduce this way of coaching so that for most people, they're just not aware of what they do, is ask them, what are you aware of when you play? That is, you could ask yourself throughout the round, what am I paying attention to? What am I thinking about? What am I feeling? And most people will, if they do that, they could maybe take notes about it or just think about it, have a discussion. They'll start to self-process, and they'll start to realize, when I'm standing over the ball with 5 different swing thoughts, I'm so tight I can barely take the club back. And then you think, okay, tell me about some of your good shots you hit during the day or whatnot. You know what? I just stood up there and I took a look and hit it at the target.
Yeah, we call it player B.
Yeah, exactly.
Player B. You hit the first one, you into the water, you duck hook it left, and then you're just like, I'm going to hit another one.
Yeah, I don't know you call how to play like player B. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. How to play like player B.
But what you do, instead of you the standard thing in the golf culture is we tell people, here's what to do. Oh, don't think about that stuff. Just swing. But that doesn't work for most people. We change from having an internal experience, from becoming aware of what we do. So if you ask them, how did it go? What were you thinking about? What were you paying attention to? Then they start to self-process and go, oh yeah. And it's the usual experience that when people find that they're thinking about so many things, they go, oh, that's when I play shitty.
Right.
And when I'm just, and sometimes it depends on why you're out there. Let's say you're taking your dad, it's Father's Day. You take your dad out just to have a great game. You're not focused on your game. You tend to play pretty well. So a lot of it, I just come down to this phrase here. What awareness is missing, the presence of which would make all the difference? What awareness is missing, the presence of which would make all the difference? That's a Fred Shoemaker gem. So coach, just asking people what they're paying attention to gets them thinking, and they get to become more conscious of what they're actually doing.
What do you think Rory was thinking about on the 18th on Sunday at the Masters, the first time he played it, when he blocked a wedge into the bunker?
I think that unconsciously he was going like, don't screw this up.
Right.
Make a good swing. And we don't know what Rory was thinking, obviously, but it appeared to that swing and the same one on 13 that, went into the watery grave there. they just didn't have the same dynamism, if I'm saying that correctly, or flow as certainly the 6 iron on Saturday or 15, or the 7 iron on 15, or whatever iron he did into 17 on 18. That was just full bore, go for it. I think it was kind of careful swings. Don't screw this up.
Did you know there's an easier way to manage risk at your golf facility? eGolf Waiver makes collecting signed waivers quick and hassle-free. Digitally gather signatures from your members and guests, whether they're checking in at the golf shop or at the bag drop. Keep your club safe from legal exposure, frivolous claims, and rising insurance premiums. Plus, our Lightspeed POS integration will enhance your workflow even further. Visit egolfwaiver.com today and safeguard your club's future.
I think that day, first of all, was the most stressful day of watching golf I've ever had in my life.
Oh, absolutely.
Watching golf.
Yes.
I literally at some point couldn't watch. I thought he was going to miss the putt in the playoff, to be honest. I thought, I don't even know how the guy, sometimes I watch that and like, I use the claw now, Tim, because I've experienced the yips, in my life, and thank God for the claw. But, you know, literally I can't believe sometimes they can pull the putter back. And I think that performance of overcoming adversity and overcoming negative thinking and finding a way to grind it back when you've lost it.
Yep.
Like it'll be used as a masterclass one day of, you know, wouldn't it be, you know, one day Rory will sit on a chair in a fireplace, you know, recounting what he was thinking, right? I mean, not probably for a decade, but at some point he'll relive those moments and tell us kind of what happened. And that it's so fascinating. Like you said, I just, when we talk about, you talk about playing with your father, I know you've shared some stories about that and lessons learned and about how coaches can connect to that emotional part of loosening up, right? To just free yourself so that you're reducing the pressure, right? I mean, that's what the great players are able to handle the pressure. And it doesn't matter whether you're trying to break 100. If you're coming down 18 and making a double bogey is going to help you break 100. Well, we've all seen it. We've all witnessed it.
Yeah.
How did that happen? So, what I want to talk to you for a bit, a different topic, which is some of the things you're talking about with regards to coaching and with regards to, is really about how we give lessons and really about how we structure things. Right. And I've always been a bit harsh on the 30-minute lesson package kind of concept, it's like that conversation a golf professional should have when someone says, how much is a lesson? It's like, well, what do you want to achieve?
Exactly.
Like, what do you want to achieve? Because if
that is the question,
if you want to, break 100 and right now you're shooting 110, then let's build a plan to figure out, let's do an assessment and have a conversation and put a package together, And like you said, it can't all be accomplished in you warm up on the range and I'll walk over there and then give you a few tips and then walk back over somewhere else, right? So do you think that obviously, if you're coaching a college player, an aspiring college player, well, that's a different coaching environment than you're coaching Mrs. Smith, who signed up for a group clinic, who's,
Yeah.
So do you think that we are doing the right service to the amateur golfer on the way that we package lessons?
Well, I think that, people want what they want. So if someone wants one lesson, who would I to say I don't do one lesson? I would give that person the best I can and provide them with an experience where they could maybe have a win or two and take something from that. It's usually foundational. It's usually posture, setup, ball position, that kind of thing. Maybe, often what you can do is like, show me your chipping position. And then they're going to move in, the weight's going to move to their lead side, that center left hip moves closer, pushing the center of gravity. And then they can start to maybe feel a little bit more solid contact. And then from that feeling of a more solid contact, go, I want more of this, But so if people want one lesson, I don't know, and they want to do it and they want to give you money for it, well, that's fine. But the best thing, as you said, is to ask, what do you want to achieve? And then you can make the point. And then as a golf professional, you need to understand how people learn. And that's the core thing there. People don't learn from information. And that's part of the problem we face in our environment today is that, particularly YouTube, TikTok, et cetera, everyone's got, this computer in their pocket that has an ocean that's infinitely deep of information. And no one develops skill, whether in business or as a musician or an artist or a golfer, from taking in some information. That's just not how we learn. So I often tell the story. It said, like, you did something amazing in your life. You learned how to walk. How'd you do that? By falling down a lot.
Right.
Over and over. And you did something else amazing. You learned to talk and you learned to walk and walk down a set of stairs. How'd you do it? Through your own experience. But your parents or the caregivers or whomever, they were models. You did this because you have this thing in your brain called mirror neurons, and you watch and you're great mimics, and you were encouraged and that kind of thing. So the mistake we make is that by thinking of something, our bodies will be able to do it. It's just not true. And in fact, there's all kinds of research that shows that when we try to direct our bodies, basically with our frontal cortex, that our brain resists. So that's why people who are suffering, to battle, cure the slice, fix their yips or whatever, the harder they try, the worse it gets. We could go down that rabbit hole of why the brain works like that, but it's when people, in essence, give up. So I think you're referencing a story I told in my book about, in my 30s, and I'm right, I'm a golf writer, and my dad invites me to play golf at Sunningdale with his buddies on Saturday morning. I want to press them. I want to press him. I'm a golf writer, look how good I am, all this. And I would just suck on that front nine because I'm trying so gosh darn hard. And then on the back nine, Dad would say, hey, let's just have some fun. And like a typical stupid, arrogant whippersnapper, I'd be thinking, come on, I'm a golf writer. I know what the hell I'm doing. And then, of course, I continue to hit it into oblivion. And then he had a line that he would roll out every once in a while. He goes, let's see your don't give a shit swing. And then, pow, I just get up there and swing it straight down, whatever. I just hit this great shot. But James, I'm a slow learner. It only took me about 2 or 3 decades to understand the wisdom of that. Stop self-interfering. So, yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. And I think that, we can all learn from our own personal experience that that's what our students are going through too, right? I mean, it's like, that I always think that that's one of the things that makes golf such a challenging sport, right? Is because it's the only, well, it might not be the only sport, but it's one of the sports that starts from a standstill.
Oh, exactly. Yes.
Right. Where as opposed to your body reacting in tennis or in hockey or in basketball or in baseball, where you're reacting to things and you're moving and moving. The golf swing starts from 0 to whatever ends up it being.
Yeah.
What, Tim, in your experience these days, or you listen, you watch, or you see what's going on. What technology do you think has had the greatest impact on coaching?
Well, I would say that TrackMan. I mean, video helps us understand form. We can look at video and see, someone's coming over the top. They're doing this and that. But I think that TrackMan and Foresight and Unicore, all these different things, they can show us more accurately what's actually happening, particularly club face, club path, what's the club face to path numbers there. That stuff tells us what is actually happening. I think that technology is huge in golf. Now, of course, the downside of that is golfers start to chase numbers. They get immersed in that, and they get away from hitting shots. And so you have to hold things in balance. But I think that being able to, see what the club face is, how it is aligned at impact, the path, the ratio of, how the club face is to the target and path to target, all that's huge.
Tim, kind of my last question, I got one more after this, I guess, but my last question for this topic is, a young golf professional, or once again, really a teaching professional of any age, if they wanted to kind of add more mental coaching into their skill set,
mm-hmm.
What recommendations would you make? I mean, you talked about asking questions. You talked about the importance of understanding people's why. But if someone wants to kind of, start to either learn about the mental coaching side of things or start to understand, I mean, it's a lifelong journey. I'm sure you would say it's a lifelong journey, just like is the search to understand the golf swing is a lifelong journey that everyone's trying to master every day. So what advice would you give to a golf professional that wants to balance a little bit more mental coaching in with their technical coaching?
Well, I would say to start doing your own work, in all seriousness, to start doing perhaps some personal growth work of some kind. Maybe join a support group. Everybody needs support in one part of our lives. And so joining a group where you start to hear what's going on with other people, and the primary experience that I've had in this stuff is like, oh, I'm not the only one who's screwed up. Everybody's screwed up. And so that gives me the permission the encouragement that I need to learn more about what's going on with me. And the more I start to understand my own experience, then I can start to understand other people's experience. And in all honesty, man, one of the best things you could ever do is to go through therapy. Just as if you're curious, what's going on here? What am I thinking about? Because a trained professional will be able to mirror to you how you show up. And through that, you'll start to become aware of more of your habits, your belief systems, your stories you tell yourself, your shadow, and that kind of thing. And that will open you up. And then you could start maybe doing some reading into different areas of, it could be psychology, it could be areas of spirituality, those things. And I'll just say that a couple of core books to read. One would be Mindfulness by Ellen Langer, and that's not about meditation. It's about paying attention. One would certainly be The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Galway. That is a huge book. And people go, okay, isn't this about golf? Yeah, you just replace the word tennis with golf.
Yes.
And so I would say just by doing that, and then you start to learn from your own experiences what happens for other people. And, for some people, I would say, I'll just be pretty frank here, for a lot of male golf professionals who are always concerned about how are they being viewed? Am I professional? And in many ways, parts of our society, we haven't got much past the Marlboro Man, always be strong and all that good stuff. And this is going to sound weird to a lot of people. Your vulnerability gives you power. That gives you power to understand what's going on with other people. And the more you start to relate your own experiences, now you don't have to freaking open up the kimono to everything. Come on. But just when you share your own stories, they go, oh, him or her too. And they hear your stories and they reflect their own stories and their own experiences. And then in that way, you draw them into your world, and then you can share in their world. And that's what's going to take you further as a golf professional, because if you just focus on insert tab A into slot B, mechanics and technique, then you risk becoming as irrelevant as the cashier in the grocery store who's being replaced with technology. Because it, man, with AI, it's coming. I mean, it's just starting. Pretty soon, there's going to be technology that can access every golf piece of information instruction ever communicated in this world. And it'll combine it with technologies that can measure things that a human being is doing that can't be done with TrackMan or with and so what I'm saying is that, yes, stay on top of developments in technique and how do you sharpen your saw that way, but also expand your awareness of what happens with people in terms of the way they think, the way they feel, what's going on for them. Because if you can communicate to people in a way and through being the greatest listener who ever lived, and people they just get this like, holy shit, this person cares and they understand me. And that's what humans want. Still, the average type A guy might be at a private golf club. He still wants to come off, but if he gets even on an unconscious level that you understand him, even just a little bit, he's going to be drawn in and seek some direction and help and maybe pay for that. And so, as I think for young people coming along, a lot of them think those are those soft skills, that other stuff. That's woo-woo shit. I think that if you don't work that into your toolkit, you may find eventually that you're as irrelevant as the cashier is going to become at Safeway.
Well, that's I couldn't agree with you more, Tim. I love your message. Teaching people or being a mentor or having a mentor or learning about vulnerability yourself. I mean, it's all about people, right? And so there's a reason why coaches even come and go with their students, because the relationship has gone into a different direction. So, the person seeking the next level has decided they got to have a different voice, and that's okay. But it is very much about relationships. And like you said, asking questions, realizing that you're not just there to say that, Top Tracer says your club face is closed, so let's work on this. Anything can do that. Tim, how can our listeners learn more about you? And you've got ebooks, you've got blogs, you've got a podcast, you do coaching, you've got workshops. How can our listeners connect with you?
I would say the best place these days is through my Substack newsletter. It's toconnor.substack.com, or just go into Substack and look for me. I post a blog there at least once a week, sometimes a couple a week. And that has usually information about my latest things that are going on. I've got my website that has information about my workshops and that kind of stuff. That's the key way, really.
Tim, thank you so much. Incredibly valuable content for really anyone in the industry, and in particular for coaches and instructors that want to bring mindfulness and mental coaching into their toolbox. And I encourage everyone to connect with Tim, connect with him through his Substack newsletter, on his website, or even LinkedIn, and to learn more about all of his great teachings. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to another Golf Industry Guru podcast. It's my pleasure to be your host, James Cronk. And as always, next time we will see you on the inside.
Thanks for listening to the Gig Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and mostly that you learned a few things that will help you improve your business. Join us next time as we continue to bring you the best and brightest golf and hospitality leaders on the planet. Thanks for listening.